The brain is the command center for the entire body. It makes us who we are. It receives information from our senses and controls our thoughts and movement. To better explore this incredibly complex organ, scientists have divided it into parts and regions. The largest part is the cerebrum, which is divided into two sides called hemispheres, just like the Earth. The outer layer is known as the cortex, which is Latin for bark. Like a tree's bark, the surface is only 1/8 inch thick, but it also contains millions of cells with fibers that send messages to other brain areas. More than 2/3 of the surface of the cortex hides in hundreds of little folds that make the wiggly visible lines on the brain. Animals that are less intelligent have a smoother brain surface. The cortex is divided into 4 regions. The frontal lobe is for personality and emotions, higher thinking skills like problem solving and controlling movement. It continues to develop until you're in your mid-20s. The temporal lobe helps process your hearing and other senses, and helps with language and reading. The parietal lobe is involved with your senses, attention, and language. The occipital lobe helps your eyes see, including recognition of shapes and colors. The thalamus in the center of the brain relays sensory and motor information to the cortex and helps with consciousness, sleep, and alertness. 12 pairs of cranial nerves carry information from your senses to and from the brain and body. Lower in the brain we find the cerebellum, which plays a key role in motor control, coordination, and spatial navigation, so we can find our way out of a maze, for example. Underneath is the brainstem, which connects the brain to the spinal cord, a nerve pathway that runs all the way down your back, sending and receiving information from your senses. The brainstem includes the pons, which helps control our breathing, and the medulla oblongata, which regulates our heart and other body reflexes like vomiting, coughing, sneezing, and swallowing. The limbic system, a region under the cortex, processes our emotions and drives. It contains the brain's reward circuit, which releases the chemical dopamine, making us feel pleasure. The anticipation of pleasure motivates us to repeat important human behaviors like eating, having fun with friends, or falling in love. But it also encourages us to repeat risky behaviors like taking drugs. Drugs signal the brain to release unusually strong amounts of dopamine. This flood of dopamine causes the high that drug users seek and makes it difficult to enjoy more normal, simple pleasures. Repeated activation of this reward pathway can lead to addiction. The limbic system includes the amygdala, which processes emotions, and the hippocampus in the temporal lobe, which is like a memory indexer that sends memories to certain parts of the brain for storage and retrieves them when you need them. The brain controls many actions through rapid nerve impulses, but there are some body functions that the brain modulates over many hours or days by secreting hormones via special glands like the hypothalamus, which wakes you up in the morning and gets the adrenaline flowing, like during a test or athletic event. The pituitary gland, often called the master gland, which helps control growth, body temperature, pregnancy, and childbirth. And the tiny pineal gland, which helps to control sleep and circadian rhythms. These are just a few of the parts and functions of the beautiful, amazing, and complex human brain. It is the center of our world and seat of our intelligence. We must exercise it, protect it, and understand how important it is to every thought and action in our daily lives.
We know that our brain is what makes us us. It's what does all of our thinking. It's what processes all of the sensory input from the outside world and creates this reality in our brain that we experience. It is us. So the question is, what is the brain actually made up of? And it's primarily made up of neurons, and these are depictions of neurons right over here. And the current view on how the brain processes information, it's by these different neurons triggering by getting excited and then stimulating other neurons. And as these signals go through this huge neural network that has 80 to 100 billion neurons, that electrochemical signal going through this neural network is essentially our thought. It's essentially our intelligence. It's arguably essentially us. So given that, a question arises. What determines our ability to do things? What determines our intelligence? And one school of thought is that, okay, maybe you're either just born with it, or you either have it or you don't. Some people are smart, some people are less smart. Or maybe you can change it. And it turns out there's actually been a lot of research on this in the last few decades. And the answer is pretty clear, that your intelligence can actually be changed. What we've learned, what researchers have taught us, is that our brains are actually a lot like a muscle. We know that you can grow your muscles by going into the gym and doing exercise and straining your muscles. You don't just work on things that are easy for your muscles to do. You do things that your muscles have to struggle with, that your muscles have to strain with, and then they rebuild themselves and they come back stronger. By struggling, it's a signal to your body to devote more resources to that part of the body. And we see that exact same thing with the brain. And here are just a couple of examples of it. This first one, this shows how the human brain develops in early childhood. This is a depiction of the neurons in a brain at birth. And then as a child develops, it interacts with its environment. It tries things out. It struggles. It struggles to talk, to converse, to interact with folks, to understand the world around it. And as it struggles, you see that by age 6, you have a much deeper and much stronger connectedness between the different neurons. Similarly, I can never say that word. These are depictions of these are the neurons of two different scenarios. This is the nerves of animals that were in unstimulating environments where they're not around other animals. They're in a bear cage. And then this is the brain of an animal that is in a stimulating environment, that is constantly being challenged, that is constantly looking at stimulating new things. And so the big takeaway from this whole area of research is you absolutely can change your intelligence, that your brain is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets, and that the best way to grow it isn't to do things that are easy for you. That might help a little bit. But what really helps your brain is when you struggle with things. And it's actually research shows that your brain grows the most not when you get a question right, but when you get a question wrong. So at least for me, this is incredibly exciting because it lets me know that when I'm going through something and I'm facing those times of maybe a little bit of adversity or a little bit of frustration, I can feel good about the fact that those are actually the times that I am growing the most. And this isn't just something that I'm saying, nice words. Research tells us when you get something wrong, when you challenge your brain, when you review why you got it wrong, when you really process that feedback, that's when your brain grows the most. And that if you keep doing that, you're well on your way to having a stronger, more able, and I guess you could say, smarter brain.